Brazil's President Lula da Silva is set to launch his campaign for re-election today, with the presidential vote to be held early October. Among Lula's challengers, one name stands out: Bolsonaro. Not ex-President Jair Bolsonaro, who is currently in prison, but his son, Flávio Bolsonaro. He's the darling of Brazil's right wing, but a series of scandals has put a damper on his approval ratings. DW's Jamilia Prang de Oliveira has taken a closer look at the Bolsonaro family's political brand.
This is Flávio Bolsonaro, the son of Brazil's ex-president, Jair Bolsonaro.
But this is not Jair. It's an AI-generated video message of him used to endorse his son, Flávio, screened at the launch of his presidential bid.
As you all know, I was jailed and silenced by means of an unjust and arbitrary decision based on something I've never done.
Jair Bolsonaro can't run for president in the upcoming elections. He's currently serving a 27-year prison sentence for a failed coup attempt back in 2023. But his supporters don't seem to care about that.
Free Bolsonaro. Our great leader must be by our side.
As the son and trusted choice of President Bolsonaro, Flávio Bolsonaro will carry on his legacy.
So what will Flávio do if he wins? He says his imprisoned father will be there.
Dad, I'm going to honor you. And you will put the presidential sash on me in January.
But who is Flávio Bolsonaro? Is he just a substitute for his father, or do his politics differ in any fundamental way?
He's a substitute for his father, and he wishes to present himself in that way, especially because what legitimizes him as the heir to his political movement is not his own political capital, neither his own political project or even electoral strength. It is simply the fact that Flávio carries the Bolsonaro name.
But it hasn't been so easy for Flávio to follow in his father's footsteps.
The emergence of a series of allegations and evidence suggesting that Flávio Bolsonaro took part in questionable schemes involving the use of public resources has added a defining feature to this public profile, and it is a negative one.
Number one, the Rachadinha. While serving as a state legislator, Flávio allegedly hired employees with public resources and then required them to split their salaries with him. The scheme became known as Rachadinha, from the Portuguese word for splitting. Number two, the Banco Master scandal. In May of this year, reports revealed that Flávio had ties to Daniel Vorcado, the man who is currently at the center of what is described as the biggest banking fraud in Brazilian history. Number three, the tariffs. 2 months later, he became personally involved in the US-Brazil tariff dispute. In July, the US government imposed new higher tariffs on Brazil. Flávio's involvement earned him the online nickname Tariflávio.
The scandals are reflected in the latest opinion polls that have Bolsonaro lagging 5 points behind Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva. But those same scandals have done little to dim the support from his true believers.
You can call us crazy. He will be the president.
In early October, Lula will face Flávio and the remaining candidates in the first round of voting. If a candidate wins more than 50%, he becomes the president. Should no candidate win an absolute majority in the first round of voting, a runoff between the two most popular candidates is held in the end of October.
And I'm joined now by Fabio de Sai Silva. He's Associate Professor of International Studies and Wake Carey Professor of Brazilian Studies at the University of Oklahoma. Good to have you with us. Let's talk a little bit about the Bolsonaro family's political brand. We have Flávio, Jair Bolsonaro's oldest son. He looks a lot like his father. What else do they have in common?
Well, first of all, thank you so much, Monica, for the opportunity to discuss these issues with you here and with the audience of the W. So Flávio Bolsonaro is in some ways trying to distance himself from his father, because his father is seen as too extremist in Brazil by many. But of course, from time to time, he will also try to build on the identity that his father has consolidated in politics. So, for instance, more recently, he started again repeating the arguments or claims that the Brazilian electoral system is fragile. So that puts him in an awkward position because he wants to, build credibility with the sector of the voters in the private sector that don't want that kind of extremism in politics. But at the same time, he will have to make those appeals to keep the basis that Bolsonaro has built on his side.
However, his father was quite popular for some time, and now Brazil's Progressive Party, which is one of the country's largest right-wing parties, says that it wants to stay neutral in October's elections. And that looks like a significant setback for Flávio Bolsonaro, is it?
That's correct. And that's both a result of the complexity of the Brazilian political system, in which these parties that are more at the center, they need to build different alliances in different states. So for them to make a decision to side with a candidate, that's very risky because they lose a lot in some places that are important for them. And it's also a result of Bolsonaro's own weaknesses, Flávio Bolsonaro's own weaknesses. As I mentioned before, he's making those extremist appeals. He's also involved in corruption scandals more recently. And all of that is making him a somewhat weaker candidate that doesn't really inspire those other parties to join him at this point.
Now, you mentioned the scandals. We also had them in our report. How big a role will these scandals actually play when it comes to the election? Latest opinion polls, they show Flávio lagging behind 5 points behind Lula da Silva, but it's still early days. Are those 5 points, is that a lot? Can he catch up?
Well, the elections this year, like they were last time, are going to be very divided. There is not going to be a huge difference between the first and the second places. 5 points is significant for Lula at this point, considering that he won by 2 points last time. And again, I think the scandals do play a role because if you look at the polls in the beginning of the year, Flávio Bolsonaro was, head-to-head with Lula, sometimes ahead of Lula. And then it came up that he was in conversations with this banker that's involved in one of the main scandals right now, that they had a lot of proximity. And that was very significant in terms of the reduction of his political capital and the ability that he would have to make the case that he is the anti-corruption candidate, like his father did years ago.
Now, the Bolsonaro family is quite close to the current US administration. And looking at the upcoming election, how fair do you think will it be? The Brazilian government just recently denied visas to 2 US officials, accusing them of trying to interfere in the election. How justified are such concerns?
Well, absolutely. I think it's not a secret that the United States is trying to influence elections in the hemisphere. It happened in Guatemala, it happened in Colombia, it happened in Argentina. So they are very open about the fact that they would like to have governments in all countries that are more aligned with the current administration. I think time is on Lula's side here, first because he has learned from what happened in these other countries, but also because the Brazilian elections are going to coincide with the US midterm elections. So the Trump administration is going to be somewhat involved or distracted by that as well. But of course, they are aware, they are following what's going on, and there are those concerns.
All right, Fábio de Sá Silva, Associate Professor of International Studies and Wick Carey Professor of Brazilian Studies at the University of Oklahoma. Thank you so very much for that.
Thank you so much.